Welcome to the Eduleadership Show. I'm your host, Justin Bader, and in this episode, we'll talk about high-dose tutoring and the evidence that it's working at scale. We'll talk about the false promise of differentiated instruction as a panacea for students who are behind, and we'll talk about acceleration versus going slower for students who are below grade level. And lastly, we'll talk about the snake and the lamb. Let's get to it. According to an op-ed in Education Week by Stanford's Susanna Loeb and Alan Safran, CEO and co-founder of the tutoring nonprofit Saga Education, evidence is piling up that tutoring, high-dose tutoring, is effective even at massive scales. And a lot of states now are starting to fund tutoring at unprecedented levels to help students catch up with their peers. And I think this is a really good thing, that we're coming together across partisan divides to recognize that this is something that works. And it's not especially shiny, like there's not a whole lot of technology involved. It's not really some new thing. Tutoring is an old idea that just happens to work really, really well. And it's great to see our profession and politicians uniting behind the fact that it works and funding it. And one of the quotes that I think really emphasizes how important tutoring is they say the states where reading scores are higher than pre-pandemic scores are using high-dose tutoring. There are states that traditionally have been seen as kind of low performers education-wise that are doing better than they were doing before the pandemic. And a big part of their success is tutoring. And the authors say it's a rare intervention that parents, teachers, and school leaders alike agree on, but they agree on tutoring. And I think that's simply because it works, right? You'd expect it to work, and now we have increasing evidence that it works. Here is another quote on how well it works from the authors of the op-ed. One analysis found that large-scale tutoring programs yield months of additional student learning in a year, more than educational interventions like summer school, class size reduction, or even extended school days. And because all of those interventions cost time and money, right? We have to put resources in place to provide those interventions for students. It's really important to know which give us the best bang for the buck. So if the extended school year of summer school is not a good investment, let's put that money into tutoring. We've got to know what works. One thing that does not work for students who are behind, especially if they're multiple years behind in reading, in math, in their foundational knowledge, is differentiation. And I think we're finally starting to let go of the platitude that if you just differentiate, then you can catch up your students. But teachers have known for a long time that that is not the case. If you have a classroom full of students who are all over the map, you have some kids who are above grade level, some kids who are on grade level, some kids who are one or more years below grade level, what they need in terms of content and what they need in terms of instruction is actually different. And one person cannot teach multiple things at the same time to multiple different groups of kids. So I think there's a very real need for that level of support that only tutors can provide. And of course, we can have even more highly trained specialists like literacy specialists and math coaches and people who can do intervention. I think there's a lot of room here for thoughtfulness about how we can provide that support. But we've got to get away from the idea that we can just say the word differentiation and that will magically empower teachers to do that all on their own. We have got to provide more support than that. So it has to involve support from people other than just the classroom teacher alone. But that support also has to work in a particular way that I think we often get wrong. Often when kids are behind, we give them instruction that meets them where they are. If they're missing background knowledge, we fill in that background knowledge. We try to close those gaps in their foundation so that they can move on to the work that they're supposed to be doing. But as the authors of a new book explained in their recent Principal Center radio interview with me, we often approach that in the wrong way.
Okay, now everyone take out your safety pencil and a circle of paper. This week, I hope we can finish our work on the letter A.
Let me get this straight. We're behind the rest of our class, and we're going to catch up to them by going slower than they are? Cuckoo!
Now, as Bart Simpson says in his immortal words there, that we're going to catch up to the rest of the class by going slower. Like, this is a crazy idea, and yet it's kind of how we naturally think about catching kids up, right? If a student is below grade level, we go back and we give them what they need. But as the authors of Acceleration for All explained in our recent Principal Center radio interview, there's a different way to think about it, not as remediation, but as acceleration. When we're working with students who have big gaps, who are well below grade level, we have got to accelerate them, not see it as going back and just remediating. And you can listen to our interview on YouTube, in your favorite podcast app, on Spotify. A couple of things that the authors shared with me in our interview. I was really impressed with their explanation of the difference between remediation and acceleration. And I was impressed with how realistic they are about some of the challenges around time, right? We don't have time to go back and teach every single thing that this kid might possibly have missed from any previous year. We've really got to focus on the priority standards. We've got to think about making sure that students get the time they need, again, from a tutor, from someone who can work with them more intensively, maybe an interventionist, because the classroom teacher simply does not have that time. And they also shared with me their belief that a lot of this starts with culture and curriculum. It's not just about providing an intervention service. It's about making sure that we as a staff believe that all kids can learn and have a curriculum that can make it happen. And we also talked about the role of system leaders, and they shared their perspective that system leaders need to not just add more, not just complicate the process, not just add requirements, but subtract. So a big part of the contribution of system leaders needs to be streamlining and making this a doable job. So check out my interview with Sharon Kramer and Sarah Schul on Principal Center Radio about their book, Acceleration for All. Lastly, it's time for Animals on Campus. And my colleague, Mr. Lamb, found a snake on campus on the first day of school. Or actually, the custodians found it and came and got him because, of course, if you're the principal, it's your job to deal with snakes, other duties as assigned, right? And Mr. Lamb was shocked at the size of this snake. Check it out.
All right, so we just finished the first day of school, and they just informed me that we have a snake in the gym. Here it is. A real snake in the gym. Must be attracted to these shiny gym floors. That's got to be what attracted it in here. Thankfully, no students were harmed. It was located after school. All in a day's work. This is one of the above and beyond responsibilities of the principal. Snake capture and snake release. There we go. All right, little guy, you're free.
There you have it. So if you have an Animals on Campus photo or video or story, send it my way, and we'll feature it in an upcoming episode of the Eduleadership Show. That's it for now. I'm Justin Bader, and I'll see you next time.